Beloved, this is not just another day on the calendar. This is a Friday, February 2026, and heaven has already marked it as a day of divine articulation, a day where your words will no longer fall powerless to the ground. Today we step into an AS ATMSPR vice OFAUEOID, SPAK and no ATCFE respondiva. This is the moment where silence is broken, fear is dismantled, and timidity is evicted from your spirit. You were not created to whisper in the shadows. You were anointed to decree in the light. There is a sound that shifts atmospheres. There is a frequency that dismantles opposition. When you open your mouth under divine alignment, you are not merely speaking syllables, you are releasing legislation from the courts of heaven. The enemy has tried to mute you with doubt, disappointment, and delay. But today, we break every gag order placed on your destiny. Today, we cancel every narrative that has attempted to silence your influence. You will speak and systems will adjust. You will decree and doors will open. You will declare and heaven will respond. This is not positive thinking. This is spiritual authority. The same spirit that hovered over chaos and brought forth creation lies on the inside of you. Your voice carries creative power. Your words are seeds, and today we plant them intentionally. No more idle speech. No more self-sabotage. No more rehearsing defeat. We are aligning our vocabulary with victory, our confession with covenant, and our declarations with destiny. As we enter this atomic prayer, prepare your spirit. Position your mind. Engage your faith. What you speak in this moment will echo into your future. What you decree today will construct tomorrow. This is your hour to speak with authority and watch heaven move in agreement. Your voice is not accidental. It is not ornamental. It is not decorative. Your voice is a weapon of divine legislation. When God formed you, He did not only give you breath so you could survive, He gave you breath so you could speak. And when you speak in alignment with heaven, your words do not merely travel through the air, they enter the spirit realm and establish order. From the very beginning, creation responded to a voice. Let there be was not a suggestion, it was a decree. And everything that was chaotic had to reorganize itself around the sound of divine authority. You were made in that image. That means your voice carries more than emotion. It carries jurisdiction. It carries power. It carries legal weight in the realm of the spirit. Too many people have reduced prayer to pleading, reduced declarations to wishful thinking, and reduced their words to empty noise. But when you understand that your voice is a weapon of divine legislation, you stop speaking carelessly. You stop rehearsing defeat. You stop agreeing with circumstances that contradict your covenant. Legislation establishes boundaries. Legislation enforces rights. Legislation defines what is permissible and what is not. When you open your mouth under the authority of God's word, you are establishing boundaries in the unseen realm. You are declaring what is allowed in your life and what must leave. You are announcing that fear does not have permission to dominate your mind. You are serving notice that lack does not have legal access to your household. You are declaring that confusion is trespassing and must be evicted. The enemy thrives on silence. He thrives when you internalize lies and refuse to confront them. He thrives when you agree with negativity by repeating it. Every time you say, "Nothing ever works out for me," you are legislating limitation. Every time you declare, "I'll never break through," you are authorizing stagnation. Words are not neutral. They either construct or they collapse. They either authorize or they arrest. They either empower or they imprison. Divine legislation begins with alignment. You cannot legislate outside of covenant. Authority flows from identity. When you know who you are, you speak differently. When you understand that you are seated in a place of spiritual authority, you stop begging for what has already been granted. You stop negotiating with what has already been defeated. You stop tolerating what heaven has already outlawed. Your voice shifts from insecurity to certainty. Your tone shifts from desperation to dominion. This does not mean you deny reality. It means you redefine it. It means you confront facts with truth. Facts may say you are overwhelmed, but truth declares you are equipped. Facts may say the door is closed, but truth declares that access is being granted. Facts may report the storm, but truth announces peace in the midst of it. When you legislate with your voice, you are not ignoring what you see. You are speaking into it until it aligns. There is a difference between complaining and commanding. Complaining magnifies the problem. Commanding magnifies the promise. Complaining gives energy to obstacles. Commanding releases energy into solutions. When you wake up in the morning and begin to declare that this is the day the Lord has made and you will rejoice and be glad in it, you are not reciting poetry. You are issuing a decree over the trajectory of your day. You are setting the tone before the enemy attempts to disrupt it. You are establishing atmosphere before negativity tries to invade it. Divine legislation also requires consistency. One decree is powerful, but sustained declaration builds momentum. Just as laws are reinforced through repeated enforcement, your spiritual legislation gains strength through repetition. When you consistently speak life over your family, your finances, your health, and your future, you are reinforcing boundaries in the spirit. You are making it clear that certain patterns are no longer permitted. You are dismantling generational cycles by refusing to echo them. Your voice is also a weapon because it confronts opposition. Silence leaves space for intimidation. But when you declare who God is and who you are in Him, intimidation loses its grip. Fear cannot coexist with bold confession. Doubt cannot dominate a mind that is saturated with declaration. When you speak the word, you are wielding something sharper than any natural instrument. You are cutting through deception. You are severing agreements with limitation. You are dismantling narratives that were designed to shrink you. Authority is not about volume. It is about conviction. You do not have to shout to legislate. You must believe. Faith gives your words weight. Faith turns language into force. Faith transforms sound into substance. When you declare healing, you are not hoping. It is an act of enforcement. When you proclaim provision, you are not fantasizing. It is an act of alignment. When you decree protection, you are not guessing. It is an act of jurisdiction. There are seasons when everything around you appears resistant. Prayers seem delayed. Doors seem closed. Progress seems slow. Those are the moments when legislation matters most. You do not withdraw your voice when resistance appears. You intensify your decree. You reaffirm what has already been promised. You restate what has already been written. You remind the atmosphere of what heaven has authorized. Persistence in declaration breaks through layers of opposition that silence never could. Your environment responds to your vocabulary. Homes shift when someone inside begins to speak peace instead of panic. Workplaces shift when someone refuses to echo negativity. Relationships shift when someone declares restoration instead of rehearsing resentment. Even your internal world shifts when you speak differently. Anxiety weakens when confronted with assurance. Confusion diminishes when met with clarity. Wariness retreats when challenged with strength. This is why you must guard your mouth. A weapon mishandled can cause damage. Careless speech can wound your own progress. Idle words can create unnecessary battles. When you understand that your voice legislates, you become intentional. You weigh your words. You filter your confession. You refuse to partner with statements that contradict your destiny. You were never meant to be a spectator in your own life. You were designed to participate through proclamation. Every time you declare what God has said, you are co-laboring with heaven. Every time you speak life, you are reinforcing divine order. Every time you decree victory, you are establishing expectation. And expectation creates space for manifestation. Silence is not humility when authority is required. There are moments in your life when remaining quiet is not a virtue but a surrender. There are seasons when heaven is waiting on your voice, and your refusal to speak becomes agreement with what is opposing you. Humility is submission to God, not submission to intimidation. Meekness is strength under control, not strength that is buried. When authority has been placed in your hands, silence can become disobedience. Many people confuse being passive with being peaceful. They assume that if they do not confront the storm, it will pass on its own. They hope that if they ignore the tension, it will dissolve without resistance. But authority was never given so you could remain silent in critical moments. Authority was given so you could confront, correct, and command. When chaos attempts to invade your space, your quiet acceptance does not prove maturity. It can signal uncertainty about who you are. There is a time to listen and a time to legislate. There is a time to be still and a time to speak. Discernment teaches you the difference. When fear is whispering lies in your mind, silence allows those lies to grow roots. When doubt is questioning your identity, silence permits confusion to expand. When injustice is pressing against your boundaries, silence can empower the oppressor. Authority requires articulation. It requires declaration. It requires boldness anchored in truth. You were not designed to shrink in environments that demand leadership. You were not anointed to disappear when confrontation becomes uncomfortable. Silence may feel safe, but it often strengthens what you should be challenging. Every time you withhold your voice in a moment that requires it, you postpone the breakthrough that could have been initiated through declaration. You delay the shift that could have occurred through decisive speech. Humility bows before God, but it stands firm before opposition. It does not confuse gentleness with weakness. True humility understands its source of power. It recognizes that authority is not self-generated but divinely granted. Because it is divinely granted, it must be exercised. Refusing to use authority out of fear of being perceived as aggressive is misunderstanding its purpose. Authority is not about dominance, it is about alignment. It is about bringing situations into agreement with heaven's intention. There are atmospheres that will not change until someone speaks. There are patterns that will not break until someone interrupts them with a decree. There are cycles that will continue indefinitely until someone declares that enough is enough. Silence may preserve comfort, but it rarely produces transformation. When authority is required, your voice becomes the instrument through which change is activated. Consider the areas of your life where you have tolerated what you should have confronted. Think about the internal battles you have endured without challenging the narrative. When insecurity tells you that you are inadequate, remaining silent allows that voice to dominate your thinking. But when you rise up and declare that you are equipped, capable, and called, you interrupt the internal agreement with limitation. The act of speaking becomes an act of resistance. Authority is not exercised through volume. It is exercised through conviction. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. You need to be certain. When you know what has been promised, you do not hesitate to declare it. When you understand your identity, you do not apologize for operating in it. Silence in the presence of doubt reinforces doubt. Silence in the presence of fear strengthens fear. Silence in the presence of confusion deepens confusion. There are relationships that require courageous conversation. Avoiding necessary dialogue does not maintain peace. It cultivates distance. When authority is required to restore, to clarify, or to correct, silence can become avoidance. Authority speaks truth in love. It does not lash out recklessly, but it also does not retreat cowardly. It stands in balance, firm yet compassionate, decisive yet measured. In spiritual matters, silence can be even more costly. When you sense pressure against your peace, you must respond with declaration. When you recognize patterns attempting to reemerge in your life, you must confront them verbally. Authority releases when it is expressed. The act of speaking aligns your internal conviction with external reality. It bridges belief and manifestation. Silence often masquerades as patience. You tell yourself you are waiting on the right time, waiting on a sign, waiting on confirmation. But sometimes the confirmation you are waiting for is activated by your own declaration. Authority does not always wait for ideal conditions. It creates them. It does not wait for the storm to settle before speaking. It speaks so the storm can settle. There is also the silence imposed by intimidation. Past failures, criticism, or rejection can cause you to withhold your voice. You begin to doubt whether your words carry weight. You question whether your declarations make a difference. But authority does not diminish because of opposition. If anything, opposition confirms that your voice matters. Resistance often signals that your declaration has impact. When authority is required, your silence can communicate agreement with what you inwardly reject. If you do not challenge negativity, you indirectly permit it. If you do not address dysfunction, you inadvertently sustain it. Authority requires participation. It requires engagement. It demands that you step forward rather than shrink back. This does not mean speaking impulsively or reacting emotionally. Authority is not reactive. It is intentional. It listens, discerns, and then responds with clarity. It does not waste words, but it does not withhold them when they are necessary. It understands that timing matters, but it refuses to let fear dictate silence. There are moments in prayer when you must move beyond quiet reflection into bold proclamation. Whispered hopes have their place, but there are seasons when you must command. When the situation calls for decisive intervention, gentle contemplation is not enough. Authority rises and declares what must shift. It names what must leave. It announces what must align. Your voice is not an accident in moments of tension. It is a tool. It is a response. It is a catalyst. When authority is required, you cannot afford to mute yourself. You cannot afford to retreat into false humility. You cannot afford to convince yourself that staying quiet is always the higher path. Sometimes the higher path is the bold one. Sometimes obedience sounds like a declaration. Sometimes faith is expressed through articulation rather than silence. Decree, don't beg. Pray from a position of identity, not insecurity. There is a profound difference between approaching God as though you are trying to convince him to act and approaching him as one who understands what has already been established. Begging assumes distance. Begging assumes reluctance. Begging assumes that the outcome depends on your ability to persuade. But a decree flows from revelation. It flows from covenant. It flows from knowing who you are and what has already been granted. When you beg, your language is shaped by fear. When you decree, your language is shaped by faith. Begging says, if it be your will, please consider me. Decreeing says, your will has been revealed, and I stand in agreement with it. Begging trembles at the possibility of rejection. Decreeing stands firmly in the assurance of acceptance. One posture is uncertain, the other is anchored. Identity changes everything about how you pray. If you see yourself as an outsider trying to gain access, you will always approach timidly. If you see yourself as a participant in divine purpose, you will approach confidently. Confidence is not arrogance. It is clarity about relationship. It is understanding that you are not trying to earn what has already been promised. You are not negotiating for scraps. You are standing on covenant. Begging often magnifies the problem more than the promise. It rehearses the difficulty, repeats the obstacle, and emphasizes the lack. It circles around the issue without confronting it with authority. But a decree confronts directly. It declares what must change. It announces alignment with heaven's intention. It does not deny the existence of the problem, but it refuses to exalt it above the promise. When you pray from insecurity, your words are filled with hesitation. You add disclaimers to your declarations. You soften your requests out of fear that you are asking for too much. You minimize your expectation because you do not want to be disappointed. But insecurity shrinks your capacity to receive. It limits your boldness. It keeps you operating beneath what has already been authorized. Decreeing requires knowledge. You cannot confidently declare what you do not understand. That is why revelation fuels authority. When you know what has been spoken over your life, you stop pleading for validation. When you understand what has been written about your identity, you stop questioning your worthiness. Knowledge transforms prayer from a desperate cry into a decisive command. This does not mean you lose reverence. Reverence remains, honor remains, gratitude remains, but fear of rejection is removed. The tone shifts from desperation to expectation. You approach not as a stranger, but as one who belongs. You speak not as one hoping to be heard, but as one already welcomed. You declare not as one trying to create a possibility, but as one enforcing a promise. Begging keeps you emotionally exhausted. It keeps you in a cycle of uncertainty. Every unanswered moment feels like denial. Every delay feels like dismissal. But when you decree, delay does not dismantle your confidence. You understand that timing does not negate authorization. You remain steady because your faith is not built on immediate results, but on established truth. There are areas in your life where you have been pleading for breakthrough, pleading for provision, pleading for peace. Yet the posture of pleading may be reinforcing the idea that you lack access. What if instead of begging for peace, you declared it over your mind? What if instead of pleading for provision, you announced alignment with abundance? What if instead of asking timidly for clarity, you decreed direction over your path? Decreeing also reshapes your internal dialogue. You stop begging yourself to be better. You stop pleading with your emotions to stabilize. You begin declaring discipline over your habits. You begin announcing strength over your weaknesses. You begin speaking identity over insecurity. The act of decreeing trains your mind to align with truth rather than fear. When you beg, you often wait passively after you pray. You hope something might happen. You watch circumstances anxiously. But when you decree, you expect movement. You anticipate response. You carry yourself differently because you believe something has shifted in the unseen. Expectation changes your posture. It influences your decisions. It alters how you walk into rooms and how you respond to challenges. Decreeing does not eliminate humility. It expresses trust. It demonstrates confidence in what has already been spoken. It aligns your voice with divine intention. It transforms prayer from an emotional release into a strategic act. You are not venting your frustration. You are enforcing alignment. You are not trying to convince heaven. You are agreeing with it. Identity-based prayer also eliminates comparison. When you understand who you are, you stop measuring your access against someone else's experience. You stop assuming that others are more favored or more heard. You recognize that your relationship is secure. You recognize that your voice carries weight because of covenant, not performance. There will be moments when emotions tempt you to revert to begging. Circumstances may appear overwhelming. Pressure may intensify. But in those moments, remind yourself of your position. Remind yourself of what has already been secured. Let your words reflect trust rather than panic. Let your declarations echo confidence rather than fear. Decreeing does not mean you never express vulnerability. It means vulnerability does not control your posture. You can acknowledge your need without surrendering your authority. You can admit your dependence without abandoning your confidence. Dependence on God strengthens decrees because it recognizes the true source of power. When you shift from begging to decreeing, you step into maturity. You move from emotional reaction to intentional proclamation. You stop negotiating with what has already been settled. You stop shrinking your prayers to fit your doubts. You begin speaking in alignment with who you are rather than how you feel. Pray from identity, speak from assurance, declare from revelation. Let your words reflect covenant. Let your tone reveal trust. Let your posture demonstrate clarity about your position. Decree, don't beg. Your words create your world. Every sentence you release is a seed, and every seed carries the potential to produce a harvest. Language is not merely descriptive, it is creative. The environment you live in is shaped not only by external circumstances, but by the vocabulary you consistently rehearse. What you repeatedly say becomes what you gradually see. What you consistently declare becomes what you eventually experience. From the beginning of time, creation responded to speech. Formlessness shifted when words were spoken. Light appeared when it was declared. Order emerged when it was articulated. That same principle operates in your life. Your words frame your perception. They influence your emotions. They guide your decisions. They construct the lens through which you interpret reality. When you continually speak limitation, your mind begins to search for evidence to support it. If you declare that opportunities never come your way, you will overlook doors that quietly open. If you confess that you are always behind, you will interpret every delay as confirmation. Words instruct your subconscious on what to notice and what to ignore. They train your focus. They direct your attention. They build internal architecture. Negative speech is not harmless. It builds invisible walls. It reinforces insecurity. It strengthens doubt. When you constantly criticize yourself, you create an internal atmosphere of condemnation. When you habitually complain about your situation, you cultivate dissatisfaction. Complaints magnify obstacles. Declarations magnify possibilities. The world you experience internally eventually manifests externally through your behavior and choices. Your relationships are also shaped by your words. Encouragement nurtures connection. Affirmation strengthens trust. Consistent negativity erodes intimacy. If you speak suspicion long enough, you will begin to interpret neutral actions as threats. If you speak gratitude consistently, you will notice qualities worth appreciating. Language conditions the heart. It either softens or hardens it. Your professional environment responds to your vocabulary. When you declare growth, you become open to learning. When you confess stagnation, you resist expansion. A mindset shaped by empowering words looks for solutions. A mindset shaped by defeatist language anticipates failure. Words influence confidence, and confidence affects performance. Performance then reinforces the narrative you have been speaking. Your health can also be influenced by your confession. While words alone do not replace wisdom or action, they shape your mental and emotional state. Speaking constant exhaustion can intensify fatigue. Rehearsing stress can deepen anxiety. Declaring strength can energize resilience. Announcing peace can calm internal turbulence. The body often responds to the signals given by the mind, and the mind is directed by language. Consistency is key. A single positive statement cannot override months of negative confession. Just as a garden requires regular watering, your internal world requires repeated reinforcement. Daily declarations of purpose, clarity, and strength gradually reshape thought patterns. Over time, those reshaped thoughts influence habits. Habits influence outcomes. Outcomes reinforce identity. It is important to understand that creating your world with words does not mean denying challenges. It means choosing how you interpret and address them. You can acknowledge difficulty without surrendering to it. You can recognize obstacles without glorifying them. You can speak hope in the presence of hardship. Hope-filled language does not ignore reality, it reframes it. Your self-talk is especially powerful because it is constant. The conversations you have within yourself often carry more weight than the words spoken by others. If your internal dialogue is harsh, critical, and dismissive, your confidence will erode. If your inner voice is steady, affirming, and truth-centered, your resilience will strengthen. You become what you repeatedly tell yourself you are. Even your spiritual life is influenced by your words. Declaring faith strengthens belief. Verbalizing gratitude increases awareness of blessings. Speaking promises reinforces expectation. Silence in the face of doubt allows uncertainty to grow. Articulating trust diminishes fear. Your confession either aligns you with confidence or anchors you in hesitation. There is also a cumulative effect to language within families. The phrases spoken in a household shape identity. Children who consistently hear that they are capable often rise to meet that expectation. Environments saturated with criticism produce insecurity. Generational narratives are passed down through repeated statements. Changing your words can interrupt cycles that have persisted for years. Guarding your mouth requires awareness. Pay attention to patterns. Notice recurring phrases. Identify statements that contradict the future you desire. Replace them intentionally. Instead of saying you are overwhelmed, declare that you are equipped to handle what is before you. Instead of confessing that nothing changes, affirm that progress is unfolding. Instead of repeating that you are unlucky, declare that favor surrounds you. Language also influences emotional regulation. When frustration arises, the words you choose can escalate or de-escalate tension. Saying "this always happens" intensifies irritation. Saying "this is temporary" introduces perspective. Words can either trap you in the moment or remind you of a broader context. They can either amplify distress or cultivate calm. You cannot speak chaos daily and expect to experience peace. You cannot rehearse failure and anticipate success. You cannot declare defeat and walk confidently toward opportunity. Alignment between your words and your goals is essential. Your declarations must match the direction you desire to move. The world you live in tomorrow is being shaped by the language you use today. Every conversation, every confession, every whispered thought contributes to construction. You are building something with your speech. You are laying foundations or erecting barriers. You are planting seeds that will eventually grow into experiences. Choose words that align with growth. Choose language that reflects faith. Choose confessions that reinforce identity. Recognize that your mouth is not passive, it is productive. What you speak repeatedly becomes what you normalize. What you normalize becomes what you expect. What you expect influences what you pursue. Your words create your world. Break the gag order on your destiny. There are invisible restraints that attempt to silence your progress long before you ever step into your promise. A gag order is designed to suppress testimony, to prevent disclosure, to keep truth from being spoken. In the spirit, it manifests as intimidation, insecurity, past trauma, fear of criticism, and the haunting memory of previous failures. It convinces you that your voice is too much, your dreams are too ambitious, your calling is too unrealistic. It persuades you to remain quiet when you should be declaring, to shrink when you should be advancing, to retreat when you should be rising. Many people do not realize they are living under a gag order. It feels like caution, it feels like humility, it feels like playing it safe. But beneath the surface, it is restriction. It is the subtle suggestion that your voice does not matter, that your perspective is insignificant, that your contribution is unnecessary. Over time, you begin to internalize the silence. You stop volunteering ideas. You stop sharing insights. You stop declaring vision. You become present but unheard, capable but muted. Destiny requires articulation. You cannot step into what you refuse to declare. Every major shift in your life will demand that you speak before you see. If you wait until circumstances validate you, you will remain waiting. Breaking the gag order begins with recognition. You must identify the source of your silence. Is it fear of rejection? Is it the memory of being dismissed? Is it the discomfort of standing out? Whatever the source, it must be confronted. Fear thrives in unspoken spaces. When you do not challenge it, it grows. When you do not contradict it, it becomes convincing. Breaking the gag order means speaking in the presence of fear, not in the absence of it. Courage is not the elimination of anxiety, it is movement despite it. When you declare your vision aloud, even if your voice trembles, you disrupt the power fear has held over you. There are also generational gag orders, patterns of silence passed down through families. Don't speak up, don't question, don't dream too big. These statements, repeated over years, shape identity. They create invisible ceilings. They teach you to equate silence with survival. But destiny does not flourish in suppression. It expands in expression. To break the gag order is to interrupt inherited limitations. It is to decide that the narrative ends with you. Criticism often reinforces the gag order. A single negative comment can silence someone for years. An early failure can convince you never to try again. But criticism does not cancel calling. Rejection does not revoke assignment. When you allow the opinions of others to dictate your volume, you surrender authority over your own voice. Breaking the gag order requires reclaiming ownership of your narrative. It requires deciding that misunderstanding will not muzzle you, Silence can also be self-imposed. You may have convinced yourself that it is safer not to try, safer not to declare, safer not to risk visibility. Visibility invites evaluation. Evaluation invites vulnerability. But destiny demands exposure. You cannot impact what you refuse to engage. You cannot transform spaces you avoid entering. Your silence may protect your comfort, but it also delays your influence. Breaking the gag order means rejecting self-sabotaging language. It means refusing to speak phrases that diminish your potential. When you say, "I'm not ready," repeatedly, you condition yourself to remain unprepared. When you declare, "I could never do that," you close doors before you ever approach them. Replace those statements with declarations of growth. Announce that you are learning, expanding, evolving. Speak progress even while you are in process. There is power in public declaration. When you articulate your goals, you create accountability. When you speak your vision, you solidify commitment. Words transform abstract dreams into tangible direction. They move ideas from imagination into intention. Breaking the gag order requires you to vocalize what you have only whispered internally. It requires you to let others know what you are building, what you are believing, what you are becoming. Spiritual silence can be equally restrictive. If you never declare promises over your life, you allow doubt to dominate your inner dialogue. If you never confront negative thoughts with truth, they multiply. Breaking the gag order spiritually means speaking alignment over your circumstances. It means announcing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, courage over hesitation. It means using your voice as a tool of enforcement rather than a channel of complaint. The gag order also manifests as comparison. When you constantly measure yourself against others, you minimize your uniqueness. You convince yourself that someone else has already filled the space you were meant to occupy. But destiny is not competitive, it is collaborative. Your voice carries a frequency no one else can replicate. Silencing it deprives the world of a perspective only you can provide. Breaking the gag order requires discipline. It means choosing to speak even when it feels inconvenient. It means initiating conversations that stretch you. It means expressing boundaries clearly. It means advocating for yourself when necessary. Each act of articulation weakens the restraint. Each declaration strengthens your confidence. Your destiny is voice activated. Doors respond to clarity. Opportunities align with conviction. People connect with authenticity. When you articulate who you are and what you carry, you create alignment. You attract environments that resonate with your declaration. Silence keeps you hidden from possibilities that require visibility. Refuse to remain muted. Refuse to let past mistakes dictate future silence. Refuse to allow fear to script your narrative. Break the gag order with bold confession. Speak vision, speak identity, speak intention. Speak destiny into the atmosphere until your voice becomes stronger than the doubt that tried to suppress it. Speak in faith. Expect response. When you release words rooted in belief, you are not sending empty sound into the air. You are activating movement in realms you cannot immediately see. Faith is not a fragile wish. It is a confident assurance that what you declare carries weight. When you speak from faith, you are aligning yourself with a higher authority. You are participating in a reality that transcends what is visible. Expectation becomes the evidence that you truly believe what you have spoken. Many people speak hopeful words but anticipate disappointment. Their language sounds confident, but their internal posture is braced for failure. Faith and expectation must move together. If you declare breakthrough but prepare emotionally for defeat, you create internal conflict. Expectation resolves that conflict. It declares that your words are not symbolic gestures, they are catalysts for change. It positions your heart to receive rather than retreat. Speaking in faith requires discipline over doubt. Doubt will always attempt to interrupt your declaration. It will question timing. It will challenge possibility. It will remind you of past outcomes. But faith does not deny history. It refuses to be limited by it. When you speak in faith, you acknowledge the challenge but emphasize the promise. You recognize the obstacle but highlight the authority greater than it. Expectation changes how you carry yourself after you pray. If you truly expect response, you do not remain stagnant. You prepare. You adjust. You move as though something has shifted. When you declare opportunity, you refine your skills. When you speak provision, you manage what you already have wisely. When you announce healing, you align your habits with wholeness. Expectation partners with action. It is not passive waiting, it is active alignment. Faith-filled speech transforms your environment because it alters your perception. When you expect response, you become attentive to subtle shifts. You notice doors that previously seemed insignificant. You recognize connections that could lead to advancement. You interpret delays differently. Instead of assuming denial, you consider preparation. Expectation reframes waiting as positioning rather than punishment. There is also resilience embedded in expectation. When immediate results do not appear, faith does not collapse. It recalibrates. It strengthens. It persists. Speaking in faith does not guarantee instant manifestation, but it establishes momentum. Every declaration reinforces belief. Every repetition deepens conviction. Over time, conviction becomes unshakable confidence. Your tone matters. Faith is not timid. It does not whisper apologies. It does not dilute itself to accommodate skepticism. When you speak in faith, your voice carries certainty. That certainty does not come from ego. It comes from alignment. You are not declaring based on personal ability alone. You are speaking from trust in something greater than yourself. That trust stabilizes your emotions even when circumstances fluctuate. Expectation also guards against cynicism. Repeated disappointment can tempt you to lower your hopes. It can persuade you to speak cautiously so that you are not hurt again. But guarded language weakens bold belief. When you speak cautiously out of fear, you restrict your capacity to receive fully. Faith requires vulnerability. It requires you to risk believing again. It requires you to articulate hope even after previous setbacks. Community responds to expectation as well. When you speak confidently about what you believe is unfolding, others sense conviction. Conviction attracts collaboration. It invites support. It generates momentum. People are drawn to those who speak with clarity and anticipation. Your expectation becomes contagious. It inspires others to elevate their own belief. Faith-filled speech also reshapes your internal world. Anxiety loses ground when expectation grows. Worry weakens when anticipation strengthens. Instead of rehearsing worst-case scenarios, you envision favorable outcomes. That mental shift influences your emotional stability. It reduces stress. It increases focus. It cultivates peace because you are not bracing for disaster. You are preparing for fulfillment. There will be moments when reality seems to contradict your declaration. Circumstances may appear unchanged. Progress may seem invisible. In those moments, expectation becomes a choice. You decide whether to reinterpret your words as empty or to reaffirm them with greater conviction. Faith chooses reaffirmation. It repeats what it believes until what it believes becomes visible. Speaking in faith also requires alignment between words and lifestyle. If you declare integrity, your actions must reflect it. If you announce discipline, your habits must support it. Expectation without alignment breeds frustration. But when your speech and behavior move in harmony, you create consistency. Consistency strengthens belief. It builds trust within yourself. Anticipation sharpens awareness. When you expect response, you listen more attentively. You become sensitive to guidance. You notice subtle redirections. You remain open to unexpected pathways. Faith does not dictate the method. It trusts the outcome. Expectation allows flexibility while maintaining confidence. Your words set a trajectory. When spoken in faith, they chart direction. Expectation fuels endurance along that path. It reminds you that what you declared is not forgotten. It reinforces that unseen processes are unfolding. It sustains motivation when progress feels slow. Speak boldly, declare clearly, anticipate movement. Refuse to detach your confession from confidence. Let expectation accompany every word of faith you release. Let your heart align with your declaration. Let your posture reflect anticipation. Speak in faith and live as though response is already in motion.